The ill are overrepresented. Where isolation, humiliation and degradation are facts of life. Welcome to prison.
It depends who's telling the story, I suppose. The prisoners would have one view, the people who work in the prison system would have another, and I think it's up to people to decide where the truth is.
Give government propaganda and the media spin doctors the flick. And check out Doin' Time for news, views and tunes on prison issues from Guantanamo Bay to Christmas Island to prisons and detention centres everywhere. Every Monday at 4 p.m. on your community radio 3CR.
We are still fired up and we're still talking about revolution.
Hello and welcome to the Doing Time show. I'm Peter.
And I'm Marisa. This is 3CR Community Radio, 855 AM on the dial, streaming live on www.3cr.org.au. And as Peter said, this is the Doing Time show. And we're starting off, first of all, speaking with Brett Collins from Justice Action, who we were meant to interview some weeks ago now, and we've interviewed him quite extensively about the human rights of prisoners and some of the wonderful work that Justice Action is doing. And today we're going to be speaking to Brett about a report that they, Justice Action, have written and some great work that they have done about the outstanding issues that is causing concern with inmates to the point that they are having psychological issues, emotional outbursts, and are just generally depressed. Now, the reason for this is that there's been quite a lot of building of rapid prisons. And what that means is that there's a lot of overcrowding, there's a lot of dormitory type situations where prisoners are almost on top of each other, and this is actually happening in New South Wales. So we're going to be speaking to Brett about this very, very concerning issue shortly. Then after that, we'll speak with Marisa and Peter, who's an Aboriginal activist from Western Australia, and she's going to be speaking about a land rights issue and some protests that have been happening, and she'll also speak about some elders that have founded this particular group and talk about land rights. So stay tuned.
Yeah, we'll just go to a song. This band's called Alien Weaponry, and the song's called Ti Aru. It's a bit of a what do you call it?
Just put it on, Peter.
A bit of a song.
Mark Zuckerberg saying the site was intentionally built to hook you.
That thought process was all about how do we consume as much of your time and conscious attention as possible.
Everyone watching, but there's nobody here. Everyone watching, but there's nobody here. Nobody here. Nobody here. Nobody here.
We understood this consciously, and we did it anyway.
Back with the Doing Time show, and we're speaking with Brett Collins about the Rapid Build Dorm project. Sounds pretty crazy. Hello, Brett. Welcome to the program.
Yes, g'day, Marisa.
Hi, Brett.
Hello, Peter.
Yeah, so Brett, tell us what's been happening. I mean, I did mention earlier on in the intro to our show that Justice Action was doing a report and doing quite a lot of extensive work. Can you explain what this Rapid Build Dorm is? Is it in New South Wales, and what's the background?
Well, look, it's actually an absolute horror. Like anyone who's spent some time in a cell would could barely imagine what it'd be like to be with another 24 prisoners all in the same dormitory together. I mean, it's a shocker. And we talk about maximum security prisoners held together, 800, right, in those sort of conditions. Now, when we first heard about it, we went, oh, no, they can't be serious. But they were. And they cobbled together at a very rapid rate, and so they next moment it was fait accompli, and we were battling hard to stop it from opening. We at one stage we had lawyers working at some sort of a Supreme Court intervention. But it just wasn't possible. We're looking for things like the environmental study and a whole range of other breaches that they had definitely had been engaged in, but we weren't able to get the lawyers in time, and so we've got 800 prisoners now in these dormitories. So we've this inquiry allowed us a chance to cross-examine the authorities about why it had happened and what were the basis of their having decided to do it.
Hey, Brett, there's dormitories like that in the United States, isn't there? Or
so the decision itself, you mean, to build it? Is that what the question?
No. What he's saying, what he's asking is, do they have that type of dormitory style in America?
Oh, I see. No, look, there are several jails in America that have done it, but every time it happens, there have been all sorts of chaos, because what you end up having is you have a number of people all bullying others, and people just getting really angry at each other. So instead of having a private space where, at least a cell means you either by yourself or you maybe with another one or two other people, where you can actually all talk together and deal with each other well. A dormitory puts all that aside, and you've got here in New South Wales, 25 people together, and so look, it's failed overseas, and the only reason they're bringing it here into New South Wales was because they hadn't worked out how many prisoners they'd have. They suddenly left with an overwhelming number of people they were putting into jail without any capacity to build a cell to carry them. So they then said, well, let's do the rapid build prefab job. And so effectively they put them in almost like a tent, but it's a great big steel tent. And amazingly expensive. I mean, the amazing thing about these dormitories is they're costing almost $500,000 per prisoner.
So what do you mean a tent, Brett?
Well, I mean, look, they actually talked to us. They discussed with us what their motivation was to build them, because we said to them, hang on, you're paying almost $500,000 per prisoner there, $177 million for 400 prisoners, and that is almost the same as if it were a normal cell. And so why are you doing this? How could you justify it? They said, well, look, we had no choice, but at one stage we were thinking about erecting tents to hold people.
Oh my God.
That's right. That's what and then they said, well, we could build these rapid build prisons in a short period of time. It was the same cost as if it were normal jails, but unfortunately we are left to do this, and here's what we have. We'll throw some goodies into it, they said. And so the goodies are, pretty illusory, actually. They've got at the moment they have computers, but they're not properly prepared, no full function. And what we had been promised before was there'd be access to the internet, so people could send emails to their families and also could receive, external counselling and education and things like that. Those things haven't happened yet. Okay, but and so far they haven't even got keyboards to go with the computers. They just have touch screens. But they might throw some goodies into this one, but everyone inside the dormitories are just horrified by it. They just
How many people? How many prisoners to a dormitory?
But 25 to a dormitory, and they got and each one of the jails have got 400, so 400 in each separate jail. One up at Cessnock and one out at Wellington, which is far west. And so effectively, they're just built on a part of a farmland, and just dumped these inside existing prisons and made new dormitory jails and started away 800 new cells.
Are they sorry, Brett? Are they bunk beds or just one single bed or?
This single story. Like we actually went in there, so we went. We actually had a chance to go through there. So I was a member of the Community Justice Coalition. I went with John Dowd, who was former Attorney General here in New South Wales, and Elizabeth Everett, who was the former Chief Justice of the Family Court. And so the three of us went through and did the inspection, talked to the prisoners, and then and also talked to the officers, talked to the education staff, looked through the whole place, and then did an official report which went into this special inquiry for the upper house just a week and a half or so ago.
Wow.
So basically, corrections have organised this?
Well, they did. They had set it up, and it took only about a year to build. So that was the attractive part of it. As I say, the cost was almost the same as if it was a full jail, but the conditions inside for prisoners are just appalling. It means any person snoring. And that's a constant problem in these areas. Each of the cubicles have only got a wall 1.5 meters high, right, and it's about 2 meters wide and 3 meters long. And they're sitting all head to head, four at a row, and then set out in a quite a tight, compact group. So anybody snoring in one area is heard by the other 24. And in the past we had a serious instance. Well, sorry, more than serious. A man was killed when his cellmate was so irritated by him snoring, he just beat him up. And so it was a guy who was about 2 years ago it happened, and so it horrified everyone. And so so that's an example of the sort of thing that can happen when you've got people living in close proximity to each other and without any privacy, no chance to be by yourself at all.
That is terrible, Brett. I mean, it's and even with the dignity of even going to the bathroom, what happens with all the toilets and everything? Can you imagine?
Well, look, they've got 6 toilets that are there, so you can go in the toilet and close the toilet. The toilets are intended for share them amongst 6 people, and you've got people can go in and out. So that's there, and they have a joint kitchen where you can you have access to. They've got a fridge and
still though.
Yeah, that's right. So, it's a big dormitory, but they close the external area at night, so you only have, but you are allowed out for longer than normal, so that instead of locking you out at 3:30 in the afternoon, you've got until 9 at night to walk out in a yard outside, and so there's some things that have a little bit of benefits, but the loss of a private space to have have noise, somebody coughing, and to have to put up with that in the middle of the night and have the disturbance of people feeling as though people looking at you, to stand up and then to have anybody else looking at you. Oh, gee, that's such a degrading living situation that they were apologising for themselves. They said, look, we had no choice, but it's really bad management, and really poor, that's for sure.
It's quite difficult, isn't it? Because there is the question of all the degradation and everything, but it's also about fitting more and more prisoners into these rapid build dorms rather than spending money on innovative programs to help people.
Well, that's right. I mean, look, when you realise how much money that is, that's almost $200 million in each of those jails. Now, that money could have just as easily been spent out in the community with building a TAFE college and making sure people have got things to do. I mean, people don't go to jail because they're scallywags and rotten people. They've got nothing to do, a whole range of social problems, and they need a hand. And that money could have been spent for education, health purposes, a whole range of stuff, dealing with people's drug use and that sort of stuff. Now, everybody knows that now, but there's a big industry around prisons, and here was a good example of ways in which they could spend it. But this inquiry, was looking at 2 things, actually. One was the dormitory prisons, and then the other part of it was about privatisation. because that was there was a major exposure in the media about maybe 9 months ago when some people had put up on YouTube. Some prisoners put up on YouTube. They had some drugs and they had also a knife, and they took a photograph inside jail. And then put that up on YouTube, and it exposed the private jail of Parklea as having being loose in security, and so after that the government were that was embarrassing, and they decided to hold this inquiry, which was looking at privatisation and the dormitory prisons. So what's the connection there, Brett? Well, the connection is both about prisons. That's what it's really about. Luckily, the dormitory prisons aren't privatised. So at least that's some benefit. But the issue about private prisons and how poorly they are dealing with the people inside, that really was well and truly exposed. There was a whole lot of really good evidence about how they were limiting the sort of services that prisoners were getting. There was but to have a private jail is just such a shocking thing to do. Absolutely, shocking thing. To make money out of other people's distress. It's morally wrong. It's a job. It's a job for the state, not a job for a multinational company to try and get a benefit from it. And of course, the more people go to jail, the more money they make. So there's a whole range of disbenefits which work against the community that major companies would try to exploit. The more people in jail, more crime. That's better for them, but not better for us. Capitalising on human misery, basically. Yeah, that's right, and so you'd expect that the general community member would recognise it for what it is. It's really a form of modern slavery, really, and of course in the whole process they're cutting costs. That means things like educational services are reduced. Food is less. They don't even have toilet paper when they want toilet paper. So there's really there's a major exposure on how slack they are in the Parklea jail, and let alone security issues. They were saying that the prison officers themselves were bringing in drugs and allowing prisoners carry weapons, and it showed you they were dealing with minimum standards, minimum interest, and trying to exploit it as much as they could. So Justice Action has actually done some inspections and actually spoken to inmates. What will be happening now? What will Justice Action do now? Well, what we did following the inquiry is we went through all the transcripts of what people said at the inquiry. So we're now compiling our own report. Because what happened was in the dormitory prison, for example, there was a lot of money spent, but then the design itself was never it would never run past any prisoners. The people who are going to be living in there had never been consulted about what form it could have been. So what we're doing now is we're preparing a report on what the inquiry threw up, and then proposing a redesign of the dormitory. Right, a design where the people can have their own internal space and actually lock it up as well. So we're working on that now, and we'll go back to the inquiry and say to the inquiry, okay, now you haven't completed your report, but we have some recommendations now based upon the information, and here's some design styles that we thought would actually suit it better, and the prisoners would be happy to help you in that redesign as well. Doesn't compromise security and gives prisoners what they want. And what are some of these recommendations, Brett? Well, the recommendations, first of all, is that the design should be one which includes the people who are living there. That's a really basic idea. And that also that the prisoners themselves should have their own committee, and they can also decide who lives where, in what area, with whom. Now, they're the sorts of social responses to imprisonment that mean people take responsibility for their space themselves and responsibility for each other, and that's a community building exercise. That's exactly what prisoners at least could be doing to lessen the damage that's done. So they're the proposals we're putting forward, and we're making our own recommendations. We're assessing the evidence ourselves and going to put back to the committee. Well, this is what we think comes out of it, and before you make your report, we've given you our report. Thank you so much, Brett. And also, before we actually finish, because we've got an Aboriginal activist coming on next from WA, but just wanted to also say about the family, the fact that a lot of the prisoners have been transferred away from family too, who are unable to visit them. Yes, and that's such a bad thing to do that and not recognise the importance of family coming in to see people on a weekly basis, to being in close contact. That's such a destructive thing. So yes, that's all counter to the community interest, and so there's a lot of work to be done for sure. There's no question about that, Marisa.
Thank you so much, Brett. Please keep up the good work, and we just have the Justice Action website in case people want to have a look.
Yes, absolutely. So it's www.justiceaction.org.au. And if people want to send us letters, very happy to receive letters. They can register for our Express as well. If they send their letters to PO Box 386, Broadway, New South Wales 2007. So PO Box 386, New South Wales 2007, and we're happy that we always respond to them.
That's great, and that's for people that don't have internet, for people in prison as well.
Yep.
Brett, thank you very much indeed, and I'm sure we'll have you back very soon.
Very good. Thank you, Marisa. Thank you, Peter.
Thanks, Brett.
Thanks a lot. Take care.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye. That was Brett Collins from Justice Action, speaking about the rapid dorm prisons and looking at overcrowding and all sorts of very, very pertinent issues, and looking at the human rights of prisoners. And we're going to be speaking with Marianne McKay shortly. And you're back with the Doing Time show. Yes, we have just had some technical difficulties, so apologies to listeners. We actually were off air for a while, but we will now read out some articles. I'm afraid that Marianne McKay has not been available. It's approximately 4:35, so we still need the show must go on despite what's happening. But anyway, let me read you an article from Human Rights Watch, and this is about the nightmare lives of Indigenous prisoners in Australia. On International Day of World's Indigenous Peoples, government should address marginalised group. And this is written by Kriti Sharma, who is a senior researcher, Disability Rights Division. A prisoner lies in his solitary confinement cells in the safety unit at Lotus Glen Correctional Centre, Northern Queensland. Prisoners in solitary confinement typically spend 22 hours or more a day locked in small cells, sealed with solid doors without meaningful social interaction with other prisoners. Most contact with prison and health staff is perfunctory and may be wordless. 2017, Daniels for Human Rights Watch. The senior officer stood on my jaw while the other officer hit my head in and restrained me. They said, "You don't run this prison, we do," and they cut my clothes off. They left me naked on the floor of the exercise yard for a couple of hours before giving me fresh clothes. For Wuru, not his real name, an Indigenous prisoner with a psychosocial disability, mental health condition, the unspeakable is almost routine. As an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander man with a disability in an Australian prison, Wuru was tragically accustomed to being locked up in solitary confinement, facing physical abuse and hearing racial slurs from prison officers. More than 35 years after the United Nations first instituted an International Day of the World's Indigenous Peoples, Australia's Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples continue to be left behind. People with disabilities in prisons across Australia are at serious risk of sexual and physical violence and are disproportionately held in solitary confinement for 22 hours a day. The researcher visited 14 prisons across Australia and heard story after story of Indigenous people with disabilities whose lives have been cycles of abuse and imprisonment without effective support. The result is Australia's prisons are disproportionately full of Indigenous people. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples make up just 2% of the population, but they represent 28% of the full-time adult prison population. Multiple forms of disadvantage mean that they are more likely to live in out-of-home care, end up homeless, have earlier contact with the police, and end up in prison more frequently than their non-Indigenous peers. Within this group, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples with disabilities are even more likely to end up behind bars. Once in prison, their lives continue to be rife with racism and abuse. Due to a lack of training, custodial staff often misinterpret the behaviour of a prisoner with a disability and respond in a punitive rather than supportive manner. The Australian government should commit to making it a priority to address abuse against and meet the needs of Indigenous prisoners with disabilities. That includes working closely with organisations of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and people with disabilities to develop culturally appropriate resources and training materials for prison staff, service providers, police and the judiciary. The government should fund representative organisations to provide specialised and culturally appropriate support to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples with disabilities in prison. And I thought I'd read that out, and that was actually from Human Rights Watch. And yep.
Yeah, you're with 3CR 855 AM. I've got an announcement. Letter writing workshop. Prisoner letter writing workshop. Saturday, the 25th of August, 2 p.m. UIRL Info Shop, 28B Ashley Street, West Footscray. It's right near Tottenham Station. Starts at 2 o'clock.
Starts at 2 o'clock.
Yeah,
it starts at 2 o'clock.
So is anyone interested, just rock up or just contact InfoShop, IRL InfoShop at gmail.com. There's a solidarity costs like $5 or $10 to go to Anarchist Black Cross Melbourne, which all the funds will probably go somewhere good towards some political prisoners
or arrestees, or whatever, or Aboriginal just in custody, whatever's there. It's approximately 4:40. I'm just going to read out another article at this stage, and this article is an excerpt from Nit TV, and they have some great commentaries and news stories on Indigenous peoples. And it's entitled Indigenous and South Sudanese Leaders Say It's Time to Stand Together. Titan de Bruin and his friend, Crin, led the rally at Channel 7. So I'll just start off reading this. A teenager subjected to a violent street attack speaks exclusively to Nit TV to try and change the African gang's narrative. And that's by Madeline Heyman Raber. And the source is The Point. That was written on the 10th of August 2018. On July 16th, a 14-year-old South Sudanese boy was stabbed twice in bushland near Melton in Melbourne by two youths of Caucasian appearance, and I think they mean white people. For legal and privacy reasons, Nit TV will refer to him as John. John has been in hospital for the last 3 weeks. He's had 2 operations and still needs 1 more on his kidney. He can hardly walk at the moment, but he is alive and home with his family. That was the worst feeling in my life, you know. I had 2 holes in my stomach. I thought, what the hell, what am I going to do? Like I didn't know what to do, John told Nit TV. I was on the floor, I looked dead. And my friend, I looked up and like he was traumatised. I saw on his face, he didn't know what to do either, and everyone was just crying. You haven't heard about it on the news because it was never reported this way. In fact, it was hardly reported at all. John chose to speak exclusively to Nit TV because he believes if he doesn't, nothing will change for his community. The stories are hyped up, you never know, like maybe that didn't happen. They just make it sound bigger. South Sudanese gang, what is that, you know? Apex. How is everyone apex? Like what the hell, what is that? This is not fair. Then when white people do criminal stuff, you don't see it on the news, low key. John speaks exclusively to Nit TV. In fact, just 1% of the total offenders in the state are Sudanese born, including South Sudanese, with 71% being Australian born. The South Sudanese people make up just 0.07% of the population of Victoria and 0.5% of the population of Australia. John claims that following the incident, the police tried to lock up his friend who had simply been trying to help. I was so close to losing my friend, like, you know, I nearly died, and now, like, he's getting locked up. What did he do to get locked up? He was just trying to help me, you know, he said. In 2007, a similar attack occurred on a teenager in Melton following a comment by former Minister for Immigration, Kevin Andrews. Kevin Andrews, the former Minister of Immigration, made that comment about the Sudanese that they're not integrating into the Australian society. Vice Chairman of Victoria's South Sudanese Community Association, AWAN Madhu, said. That was well received by some vigilante and far-right groups. They took the law into their own hands, and one of the Sudanese guys was attacked in Melton, similar to John. It was an attack, it was a barrage, and after that, the offenders were not caught by the police, and the incident, nothing was done about it. Following the attack on the teenager, the offenders sent racist text messages and made phone calls to the boy's brother. The attack came just days after the funeral of Leap Goni, an 18-year-old South Sudanese man who was bashed to death in a racist attack. The mother of Leap Goni at a recent Channel 7 rally. Since 2007, the African gangs narrative has been running in the media, with it seemingly reignited by recent comments made by Federal Minister for Home Affairs and Immigration Peter Dutton. The Victorian public is really outraged by some of the goings-on. The reality is, people are scared to go out to restaurants at night time because they're followed home by these gangs. Home invasion and cars are stolen, Mr Dutton said during an interview on 2GB radio in January. So how does the Sudanese community believe this has affected their youth? 20-year-old organiser of the recent rally at Channel 7's Melbourne office, Titan De Bruin, rejects the word gangs, but he says it's no surprise to him that South Sudanese youth act out. As well as intergenerational trauma, offensive depictions of South Sudanese youth in the media, especially on Channel 7's Sunday night recent segment, do not help. I mean, if you tell a child that there's something like every single day of their lives, they keep on telling them, they're going to start believing it, Mr De Bruin said. And it's going to do damage to how they see themselves and their own self-image. The South Sudanese community sees similarities with how Indigenous Australians are treated by the legal system. There's a high number of the young South Sudanese now incarcerated in prisons, and some of them are being imprisoned for minor offences, similar to Aboriginal young people who are experiencing the same thing, Mr Madu said. So when I look at it, race is clearly playing a role in this, and it's the same thing in America as well. Mr Madu agrees. He cites the Elijah Doherty case as an example. One of the great examples is the Aboriginal boy who was killed in Western Australia a few years back. That boy didn't get he was murdered. The guy who murdered him didn't even deserve a fair justice, he said. So when I look at these cases, they're very similar in a way, because now our Sudanese community are experiencing exactly what the Aboriginal people are experiencing. Despite Victoria Police telling the media that these children are not gangs, the media narrative has continued. Standing together, Aboriginal Victorians have long been working with the South Sudanese community. The South Sudanese community, we actually need to connect with the Aboriginal community, and we are already having a working relationship with them, Mr Madu said. But the thing is, we are taking a fight that we're not winning. The Aboriginal people have tried. They never won. The African Americans have tried that, and they're not winning. That's the thing. So it's a system, which is a system that needs a holistic approach in order to fight this system. It's a systemic issue. That's how I can look at it. A woman stands in solidarity with the South Sudanese community. While they're a strong community, they are a small community, and Greens MP Lydia Thorpe has called for Indigenous Australians to stand in solidarity with the South Sudanese. I think that some of our politicians need to take a good hard look at themselves and stop being racist and do the job that you're meant to be doing, and that's serving all Victorians in a way that isn't racist and in a way that's more inclusive, she said. I invite all African people, every person of colour, to come into Parliament, come and see me, Let's mix it up. Let's get as many black fellas in this place as we possibly can. And isn't that a lovely ending of that article? And it's always good to have strong Aboriginal women like Lydia Thorpe being the Greens MP. And it's horrible what's actually happening to the Sudanese community.
Oh, yeah, it's true, yeah.
There is one thing I do want to talk about very, very briefly. It's approximately 4:47 and you're listening to the Doing Time show. Is that with the letter writing workshop on Saturday, It's not just about letter writing. It's also going to be about looking at what is a political prisoner, looking at how we can help political prisoners. So when you do rock up there, it's awesome to write letters, and there is going to be a practical workshop on how to do that. But it's also about how we can actually connect with prisoners on the inside.
Yeah, that's right.
And looking at, what is a political prisoner? What constitutes a political prisoner? How can we help them? And that is the thing that is important, not just about writing letters. It's about offering support to the people inside.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to let listeners know what that context is. and there will be, I believe, it's braille friendly, and isn't it, Peter?
Yeah, yep. Braille friendly, and if there was a sign saying there's Auslan interpreters, but I don't think there will be. But
possibly
we
not.
can
We'll see.
Work around that.
Yeah. It's approximately 4:49, and we've got about a couple of minutes left of our show. Now, are we able to play CDs or not, Peter?
Oh, just play another song from that band.
Yeah, because we're having some difficulty with announcements and stuff, so we'll just play some music.
That's it. Alien Weaponry again.
And you're back with the Doing Time Show, and it's approximately 4:53. I'm just going to read out another article, and it was in the Daily in August, and it's called "Traditional Owners Locked Out of Nuclear Waste Vote." News. The head of the Adnyamatha, and I'm going to spell this, ADNYAMATHANHA, Traditional Lands Association, says the majority of Adnyamatha people have been denied a vote on a proposed radioactive waste management facility near the town of Hawker in the Flinders Ranges. Stephanie Richards is the woman that wrote that. Hawkina Waterhole is a sacred Adamanantha site and is located 8 kilometres away from the proposed radioactive waste management facility at Wollabina Station. Wollabina Station, located approximately 30 kilometres northwest of Hawker on country, has been shortlisted by federal government for a facility that will permanently hold low-level nuclear waste and temporarily hold intermediate level waste. It is one of 3 sites, the other 2 situated close to Kimba, that was shortlisted by the federal government to store nuclear waste. The selection process is entering its final stages with a postal ballot beginning on August 20th to measure community support for the 3 nominated sites. But ATLA's CEO Vince Cathcart said the voting guidelines were disrespectful to traditional owners, as the majority of Adamanantha people do not live close enough to the proposed Wollabina site to be eligible to vote. The voting range includes residents of the Flinders Ranges Council and those who live within a 50-kilometre radius of the Wollabina site. According to Cathcart, there are approximately 2,500 people in total, but only about 300 Adamanantha people who live in the voting range. Cathcart said about 50 Adamanantha people who lived outside the voting range had expressed interest in voting, but when ATLA asked Federal Resources Minister Matt Canavan during a consultation trip to Hawker last week if those people could be granted a vote, Cathcart said Canavan told him that only those living in the prescribed voting range could participate. It's a crazy situation, Cathcart said. This is another country, and it is a very important place to the people, to the nation. People have strong connections to land. There's a large amount of people, many who don't live on the land, but they go back on a regular basis to travel around the land. A spokesperson from the Department of Industry, Innovation and Science said the vote was set following extensive consultation with the community. The spokesperson said if anyone was to fall outside the voting area, they could put in a submission, which would be considered. The ballot will be one of a number of inputs that will contribute to the assessment of community support, which was also drawn on public and private submissions and feedback from stakeholders, the spokesperson said. The views of the traditional owners of land around the site are being directly sought and provided to the Minister as part of his decision-making process. This includes the views of ATLA and expressed through its board. But Cathcart said he was disappointed that Canavan had not consulted with all ATLA members during his consultation visit. He said Adamanantha people had been locked out from the vote, despite holding native title rights over the land. Canavan is saying this will strengthen our culture, that this will be good for us, but what it is actually doing is punishing the environment. This is a place where we have gone to get bush tucker, where we have come as traditional owners for thousands of years. They've shown us disrespect, and this is very hurtful. The proposed site holds sacred meaning for the people, as it is located close to the Honkina waterhole and ancient burial sites. The people voted against the nuclear waste site at an ATLA AGM in March. However, some people had indicated their support of the facility during a Senate Economic Reference Committee public hearing last month, citing increased job opportunities as a potential benefit. Wollabina Station co-owner and former Liberal Party President and South Australian Federal Senator Grant Chapman nominated the station as a potential site. Chapman is a supporter of nuclear waste in Australia and chaired a Senate committee into the subject during his time as a senator. The proposed repertory would take up 1 to 5% of the property. Last month, the federal government tripled the incentive package for the community that hosts the nuclear waste repertory. The government had promised to spend more than $10 million in the district where the facility is built, but under new incentives announced by Canavan, the government increased funding to $31 million. The new incentives include $20 million to deliver long-term infrastructure projects, $8 million in training programs for locals and businesses to benefit from the construction and operation of the facility, and up to $3 million over 3 years and for Indigenous skills training and cultural heritage protection. What a load of bullshit.
Yeah.
This is just disgusting.
The technical issues over. I'm finished.
The technical issues are over. That's good. But yeah, that's the end of that article, and it is connected to prisons because look at this disgusting what they're doing with nuclear waste.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're now going to go out with our theme song. Can we play our theme song?
Yep.
Black Fella, White Fella from the Rumpy Band. Technical difficulties have now finished, and Beyond Zero is coming up next. Okay. Thank you, and bye-bye.
Bye.